I've been meaning to do this video for a while, after I passed 100 hours in Valhalla, so let's do this. As I got deeper into the game, and left for England, I noticed many returning elements from past titles. I'm going to share my favourites with you now. Returning from Rogue was snow as a major terrain, which I loved to run around in for the first few hours of playthrough. As part of this, I was glad to see the freezing water mechanic again, but I would have preferred this to be upgraded from the earlier system so that damage would be dealt more quickly to Eivor. The White Room is back with the ANIMUS sound on target assassinations. This feels so good, especially with a confession room for each target in the game. Assassinations feel super satisfying now, as they should do, making stealth that much more fun. Returning from the first game is the sound for air assassinations, which brings a smile to my face every time I hear it. Stealth hasn't felt this good in a long time, especially when clearing areas of enemies without them spotting you, and also with the removal of tagging enemies with your bird. I'm also glad to see the return of the train assassination from Origins. However, when roaming cities, enemies spot Eivor far too quickly, and I feel like this should be changed to more closely match the older stealth detection systems, where the bar fills up with yellow, then red at a slower speed, unless the player is outright spotted. I also had a few issues with blending with monks, including one time in London where I was spotted while blending.
Where do you think you're going?
One of these London missions involved me assassinating a target, accessing the White Room complete with the ANIMUS sound on entry and exit, before a short chase through the streets, which made me feel like I was back in the Holy Land of the Third Crusade, a feeling I've not felt for a long time. One more thing I wish that the team would change is for all the shadows to be darkened considerably, because they give away too much. You can see their face and body, giving away the identities of unknown targets. This is an issue, and I shouldn't have to block these images from my sight. I do like the cloak mechanic, as it improves upon the old criticism of how enemies couldn't spot the person with armor and weapons, but there are too many instances of clipping through other cosmetics, even in cutscenes. Social stealth is a welcome return, even if it isn't what it used to be, and advanced assassinations are a nice touch, signifying the skill it takes for an assassin to hit the right spot, though I haven't failed one yet. Overall, I am loving the stealth gameplay, often starting stealthily and finishing in combat. Actually, let's explore that. Combat feels great with dramatic finishes. Never does it feel like a slog to enter combat. It is consistently very fun, especially with the cinematic style, and it honestly feels like this combat could be my favourite in the series. You can't just cast it aside by always sticking to parries and counters. It looks fantastic, and it encourages you to vary your attacks. The bows also feel really quite good to use. I haven't used predator bows, and I used a light bow temporarily, but now I stick to the powerful hunter bow. I kept the Raven gear set for a very long time, just because I didn't feel like I needed to switch it out once I upgraded it to flawless, but I upgraded another set to test how it differed. At this point, I only switch if it looks better than the current gear, so I'm currently using a combination of the mental and hidden one sets because they look good. I think that's a good thing though. You're not locked behind gear that is a lot better than any other, at least not from what I've experienced. I didn't like how the axe looked when I ran, so I've gravitated towards using a hammer with a heavy shield in my supporting hand. I would also definitely recommend turning off all the HUD elements except for health and adrenaline. This instantly makes the gameplay more immersive, as you're not just waiting for a number to reach 0, and you don't know how much damage you'll do when you're using your bow and arrow. This also goes for exploration. You've got Sunin, so there is no need for a compass or distance markers. Of course, this is up to you and how you feel, but I would recommend removing some HUD elements for the combat. I also changed the button mapping so that I could use the right trigger for running and X to assassinate. This remapping option is appreciated. My two favourite soundtrack composers of the series are back, Jesper and Schachner. The music of this game is a return to form for the series, elevating stealth, combat, exploration and cutscenes to a higher level of enjoyment. When I returned to Ravenstorp after an arc, the Ravenstorp theme played and I just sat and listened to it. In the spirit of the Yuletide event, I had been exploring locations to complete objectives, and the soundtrack was very nice for this change of pace. Not to forget Einar Selbik's songs for the Longship, which are also pretty fun to listen to, as Eivor sails across the rivers of England. Early on, when I started to use stealth, I had a lovely moment when I was assassinating enemies, involving some air assassinations with the sound, and I noticed the Brotherhood-esque music playing before moving to a new area, and the track which I thought was from Sarah started playing as I killed more enemies. This was a very special moment, and I really enjoyed it. Through Ravenstorp, we see the return of the settlement, and along with that, quests. These quests feel in the same spirit as the Davenport homestead, with a better connection to the residents. I like how as Eivor collects resources from raids, she can use these resources to house people living in the region, making connections and unlocking quests. Right now, I'm about to start playing through a story arc made available through one of the residents of Ravenstorp. On the topic of story arcs, they're like sequences of older games, while giving the player more freedom over the order in which to access them. Unfortunately, some of these arcs feel like filler content. I can't help but think that these are the memories that the ANIMUS of the original game would fast forward over to a more recent memory. But the arcs that are filled with more story are much better and work well in the new structure, with my only problem being in standard dialogue choices having not much consequence. The other choices where Eivor can fight, use charisma, or give a non-charismatic reply are great, but the normal choices in dialogue tend to have no significance. Say there's two options A and B, and you pick A. Eivor will say A and incorporate reply B into her dialogue. I'd prefer it to not give us this choice if all the dialogue choices end up being spoken anyway, and just keep the action choices. Parkour in the world is improved, allowing for the return of Shanty chases in the form of tattoos, despite the free running not being as good as it used to be. Still, it's nice to see this come back. The most the Creed was criticised and interpreted was in the games before Syndicate, particularly with Ezio and Haytham, which is why it's so satisfying to see the return of Creed criticism in the form of the Magas Codex. These documents are genuinely good to see in the game, making you question the Creed, like in the oldest games. A substantial modern day is back. This is where we'll start to get into spoilers, but for this section, I'll only mention what happens once you exit Animus for the first time. First of all, Sean and Bex are back in person waiting by the Animus, something that hasn't happened since Assassin's Creed 3. This puts the modern day to a great start, along with the direct continuation of the modern day of 3, something that fans of the series should have gotten a long time ago. This is awesome to see, as someone who always wanted more time outside of the Animus back in the first 5 games. I haven't had much happen in modern day, other than a satellite falling, notes around the accommodation, and some conversations with Desmond's assassin cell. But, just as in Origins, I accessed Layla's laptop before heading back into the Animus, and was pleasantly surprised. I don't want to spoil too much, but just open up that media folder, and take it all in. The truth returns from Brotherhood in the form of Animus anomalies. These are certainly my favourite blue mysteries on the map. Of everything, this is where the parkour is closest to the original games, especially where Desmond would freerun in the VR room of the Animus. Mixed in are elements of the Lost Archive DLC from Revelations, along with music similar to that of the modern day of Brotherhood. It's been 9 games since we last had the chance to explore a modern day element implemented in the Animus, with Rebecca and Sean talking to the modern day protagonist. 10, if you count Liberation. Of course this feels satisfying. For this final section, I've got to mention the London arc, so spoilers if you haven't played through that yet. It's been many hours now since I explored London, but it felt great as a city, though having recently completed the Jorvik arc, I very much preferred how that was built, with close rooftops for some nice navigation. I was glad to see the return of mystery solving in the style of Syndicate, blended with 3, which is my favourite way of presenting this on screen. Documents are good to read again, with the dev team's knowledge of the existing lore, allowing for theorizing in a way that I haven't been able to before, with Valhalla being the newest release. And the writing doesn't just acknowledge existing lore, but builds upon it, especially with info on the Father of Understanding being illuminated, along with the Mother and the Sacred Voice.
And who's asking?
May the Father of Understanding guide us.
And may the Mother of Wisdom give us strength.
Given that this time period is right in the transition from the Order of Ancients to the Templar Order, at least from the handy documents in the modern day, it's great to see the difference between the two factions be explored as done in Origins, but to a greater extent. Side note, I really like the papers on the walls of the modern day cabin. It makes it seem like the player can be in conversation with Sean and Bex, sort of like the online theory discussion pages, up to 2012. The London arc reminded me of the Carnivale of AC2, especially with the old sound effects and archery competition. I keep exploring more of the world as I've been putting this video together, and now I've explored Winchester. These 3 main cities of England are the best we've had for some time, and I'm hoping for more cities like this in the future. Putting all of this together, I'm really enjoying my time with Valhalla. Where would I rank my current enjoyment? Maybe less than Rogue, because often the game feels spread too much in duration, resulting in a thinner or lower level of quality. That said, it does have its moments in story, with consistently good gameplay. On second thought, maybe not below Rogue. England looks and feels better to explore with all of these features that I mentioned, plus the main story is more enjoyable when you get there. Right now, at 140 hours in, and every region in England explored except for Hamptonshire, Valhalla should go between Rogue and 2.